Yeah, I know, I am a little late to the Jamboard party, but I'm kind of hoping you are too. Hi, this is Erin, and welcome to Everything EFL, my little podcast about English language teaching and other teachy stuff too. Credit and honourable mentions will be given during the episode or in the show notes. Let's crack on. Hi everyone, welcome back to Everything EFL. If you are new, you are most welcome and I'm delighted to have you here. If you've been here before, welcome back. Okay, let's crack on guys. So, Jamboard, you may have heard of it. I know a lot of mainstream teachers have been using Jamboard. I'm wondering if there are any EFL teachers there who haven't quite ventured that far. This is the episode for you. So, Jamboard, what is it? Well, I'd say it's a cross between PowerPoint and Google Docs. Where do you find it? Well, it is a Gmail application. So you go to your Gmail, you go to those little 9 dots in the top right corner of your screen, and you go to the drop-down menu. You scroll down, and you'll see a big yellowy orangey J. Right, so you go onto that, you press plus, you create a Jamboard. So there are 20 slides maximum. Its basic functions are things like text box, sticky notes. You can upload pictures as a background. You can do that using Google Images, something you've created in Canva as a JPEG, possibly even a screenshot. Now, what I like about it is that it's simple. Like with PowerPoint, I tend to get really distracted with the format and the details and the animation. Jamboard doesn't have any of that. It's much simpler. So in that case, it sort of takes less time, okay? And the thing I really love about it is that students access it with their Gmail accounts, and then they can go into it on their end, share their screen with their group, and it's completely interactive. The students have total control. They go through the slides at their own pace. They can add sticky notes, they can add dialogue or text, and it's completely communal. They have to communicate and focus on this one thing. So what you can do is jump in and out monitoring the pace of the lesson, making corrections, and things like that. Keep the activities bite-sized. I'm going to talk more about that in the next episode, but I will give you a flavour of that in a little bit. But I think the best thing to do is to check it out, play around with it. It takes a little bit of time just to get into the rhythm of it, but I promise your students will love it. Just play around with it. You can find lots of templates and advice and ideas online on how to use it. Now, the example I'm going to give you is for my upper intermediate class, so it would be up to you to figure out how to adapt it for lower learners. And if you're worried about shy learners in the breakout rooms communicating with the other students while using the Jamboard, check out my episode 46, Outgoing Students versus Shy Students Online. That will give you a few pointers here. And I also think it will be great for individual private students as well online, because if you're doing, let's say, a matching activity, I did, for example, the uses and meanings of get. So I had maybe 8 little sticky notes on a Jamboard with the meanings of get, like become, and things like that. And then on the other side of the board, I had sentences like, it's getting darker now, and they kind of have to match both of those things together, the meaning and the example sentence. Perfect, you just sit back and relax and the student does the work, as it should be. Now, I'm going to give you a little flavour of what you can do on Jamboard, and hopefully it will make some sense. So I'm just going to tell you about some lessons that I did a few weeks ago. So, my first slide is always the aims of the lesson. I found a very nice kind of cork board on Canva, and I put some sticky notes on it, like post-it notes, and in those post-it notes I just use the text box to put the date and to put the aims of the lesson. We look at that together. And then the second slide, have you ever seen those memes online with how are you feeling on a scale of dog? And there are 8 pictures of dogs with different expressions. And they have to say, yep, I feel like number 8 because. So I always start my second slide with a how are you feeling kind of meme or grid. So they always start there. So this was a while ago, okay? On the Monday, we had a how are you feeling slide. Then we had a review of the collocations from last week. So basically they had to match the adverbs, for example, deeply, bitterly and things like that, to certain verbs or adjectives like sorry, recommended, things like that. Just a little review there. And then they moved on to the next slide. Some error corrections based on their speaking. Correct these sentences. So again, they're all fully engaged. And then we had the grammar, have something done. This is really complicated. So what I did on one slide was I had a couple of photographs of myself so they could kind of differentiate between like a professionally done photograph and just like a normal photograph that someone took. And I had some sort of concept checking questions. And then on the next slide, they had the rules that they had to read together. And then at the end of the Jamboard session, we kind of went through some questions and things. And then for homework, I gave them a gap fill. We didn't do that one in class. So I gave them time to process the information and do the gap fill for homework. Tuesday, again, how are you feeling? Then on the next slide, they checked the grammar homework together. And then on the next slide, they had an activity to get them using the grammar. What can you have done in these places? And it was just a list of places like opticians, doctors, and they had to create sticky notes with things like you can have your eyes checked, you can have your bloods taken, things like that. So again, sort of not completely free, but it's kind of a scaffolded activity. So they are producing language, but in a kind of a supported, scaffolded way. And then we did some vocabulary. Again, going back to the collocations, it was just a gap fill. But again, it's just a little bit more interesting when it's on a slide and they're all looking at it together. And then my main activity was going to be watching a video. So the next Jamboard slide was a vocab matching, and then a lead-in question for that activity. So that took you about an hour. Most of these Jamboard activities take about an hour. Then on the Wednesday, how are you feeling again? Then we had discussion questions leading from the video that we watched. Then on another slide, we had a gap fill using the collocations that we'd been doing. And then on the next slide, they had to create their own sentences using collocations. And then on the next slide, we had plastic surgery nightmares, where they had to use have something done again. In the present perfect, she's had her nose done, things like that. And then the lead-in to another main activity, which was an agony aunt letter. So there were just questions like, who do you turn to for advice? And on the next slide, there was a vocabulary matching activity to prepare the students for the agony aunt text letters that they were going to read. It was a read the agony aunt letters and then match them to the correct responses. And then we left it at that. And then on the Thursday, we did a how are you feeling? We had a quick review of the agony aunt vocabulary. I think it was probably a gap fill or maybe correct these sentences or something like that, just to remind them of the vocabulary that they had been pre-taught. And then we reread the original text and we identified more language from the text, and then we left it there. On the Friday, how are you again? And then with the language that we had already looked at, we created, or the students created, sentences of their own using the language on the Jamboard. And then on the Monday, what they did was they actually wrote their own responses to some letters that they made up. So they wrote letters first, and then they read each other's letters and wrote sticky notes with responses on. So all of this was done over the space of a few days. Now, typically for me, my Jamboard sessions would last around an hour. But within that hour, I practically said nothing. Okay, I just monitored. I went in and out of the breakout rooms, and the students do all of the talking and all of the work, and they seem to really, really enjoy it. So yeah, this is just a snapshot of Jamboard. There are millions more ideas out there, and I understand that, most teachers are coming to the end of online learning. Not all of us are, though, and a lot of us do have private students as well. So I would encourage you just to try it, open it up, have a look, do some research, look online, and just try using it. And I guarantee your students will absolutely love it, and you will too. So on that note, I'm going to say thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. The podcast is starting to grow, which just makes me so happy. And I can see the numbers getting higher. I can see the response and the feedback getting stronger. And I'm just really delighted. And I just want to thank you guys for listening and supporting me. I would ask you to share this episode or the podcast with any teacher who you feel could get something out of it. Word of mouth is what's going to help this podcast to grow. I wish you a very happy, peaceful week, and join me next week as I will give you a little bit more detail about bite-sized learning and why I think it's a good idea. Have a safe week, guys, and share the love. Bye.